we are going to focus on authentication in this video. I have a strong feeling I'm going to go over what is normally my 10 to 15 minutes, but the goal on this one is to make it possible to minimally sign up a user through the mobile app, and optimally, if things go really smooth, to do the login as well. If not, login will show up in the next video. So as you can see in front of us, here is our to-do list, but this time the list is empty. The reason for that is I have turned on the security for each of the APIs that we've been using. So over here in Xano for our back end, you see the little padlock that says authentication required. I've turned that on for each one of these APIs, which means I can no longer call it without having proven that I'm a valid user for the system. I'm going to go into just one of these. I preset these such that you didn't have to watch me set each one of them. You come into the API, you go into settings, come down to the bottom where it says authentication, and you can either disable it or turn it on. By default, when you create a new table and have the create, read, update, and delete APIs created on your behalf, they start as disabled. But in this case, they're all enabled now for authentication, which is why our app is no longer showing to-dos. So we're going to get into the authentication APIs, which impacts the user table. Let me bounce out to the user table. Okay, so currently the user table is empty. I'm going to add a user and just kind of run through and show you what happens when you've been authenticated, and then how to tie AppGyver into that authentication so that you get your to-do list again. So let's go back to the APIs. And so in Xano, I am going to choose the authentication signup API. And I'll walk through in a moment what each one of these steps does. But to start with, we are going to run and debug and set up an account. So this will be test account 1. We'll make up an email. It doesn't have to be real. We're not doing anything with it other than logging in with it. And then we'll make up a temporary password to use. So when I run this, you'll see that I get an auth token. I'm going to capture that auth token for the moment. We'll need that later. And I'm going to walk you through what we just did, and then I'm going to go back out to the user table and show you that that user got created. Okay. So in our function stack, well, ahead of that, our inputs, we're getting a name, an email, and a password as you saw me enter. And that's being passed into the function stack. And the very first step is to attempt to get a user that has a matching email to the email that we passed in. We passed in an email of ta1@email.com. And you saw when I started this that there was nobody in the user table. So this get does not find any user. And because of that, this precondition that would say this account is already in use, since no matching email address was found, we're going to get past this precondition. Had somebody already signed up with ta1@email.com, we would have bailed at this point in the function stack and the API call and received an error back in the mobile app that said this account is already in use. So now that we know that that account does not exist, we use the add record for the user table. And by default, created at gets a now, which means whatever the current date and time is to milliseconds will get assigned to the created at. The name, email, and password all get assigned based on what we passed in, name, email, and password. And then the output for that will be an ID created at, name, email, and password. Pretty straightforward. That'll all be assigned to the user variable. And then what happens is I should probably show you where this is found, but for now I'll explain it. The create authentication token is a special utility function that will create a unique authentication token based on the information contained here. Probably the thing of most interest is the fact that you can set your expiration time, and 86,400 seconds equals 24 hours. So this will last, this token will be valid for 1 day. And if you attempted to reuse it to get back in through the mobile app, you would be asked to log in again. But all of this gets used to create an authentication token that's assigned to the auth token variable that is then returned to the calling application. And if you remember when we did the run and debug, you saw me copy and paste the result of that auth token so that we could use that later. Okay. So that's what's happening when you sign up. I told you I would show you where you could find the create authentication token. I'm going to go into the function stack plus sign. I get these options. I'm going to look at utility functions and then create authentication token. And here is where you fill in any of the information. You can see that most of that information, except for the ID being user ID, everything else is filled in for you. So all you really need to do is to pick up the variable user and put in .id, and we'd be good to go. Okay, so that's how that gets set up. Let me make sure I delete the right one here. So I deleted the one I was showing and left everything else there. So we have a functional sign up, or at least I think we do. We come back out to the user table. There it is. So that is the right time for my central time zone. There's the test account -1 and the email, and then the password, of course, is hidden so that you can't see what it is as somebody with access to the database. So that's a hash version of the password there. So now we know that we can create a user. We are going to go back now to AppGyver, and let's see how effectively we can show you how to set up our data resource, the to-do data resource that's been there, to accept an authorization or an authentication, even though they call it authorization, an authorization header. So we're in our to-do data resource up here. We're in the base. We want to put it into the base because we want this authorization header to apply to all of this data resource. So I'm going to create a new HTTP header. And the HTTP header is called authorization. So we are going to call it the same. This is HTTP standards. So we're doing as they want. And then we're going to paste in the value. Nice long value there. But what goes at the beginning of it, since this is called a bearer token, we have to type in the string bearer and a space. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. So at this point, I am going to go into the create record post. Nope, that's not where I want to go yet. I want to go into the get collection one. And before in the app, it was failing. Now you see we get our information back. And just to show you there is no magic here, I am going to remove that bearer token, come back to the get collection, and when I run the test, it fails. And you see that it's got authentication required. So I'm going to go back and add in the value, save it. And there we go. And also, if we look here, we now have our stuff back. So that's how you go about creating a secure application. But this is only at a rudimentary testing level. We obviously want to tie all of this in to the application itself, which means we are going to need to create a sign-in page and hook that sign-in page to a new data resource called signup, and kind of go from there. So first steps here. With AppGyver, if I want to do authorization, I need to come into the authorization or the authentication menu. And I should just warn you, for whatever reason, I tend to say authorization instead of authentication. Authentication is very specifically proving who you are, and authorization is what you're allowed to do within an app. So even if I may say it wrong, that is the meaning, authentication versus authorization. So we are going to enable authentication, and it's going to be direct third-party authentication. And we're going to accept what they're going to do. They're going to make changes to our app for us, and we're fine with that. And there we go. Okay, so they have created a login page for us and some variables. And so here you can see we now have login. But like I said, we actually want to address sign up ahead of doing login. So I'm going to add a page as well. And that's going to be a sign up page. And I'm going to see how, I guess, quickly and yet clearly I can go through this process. What we're looking to do now, before I just start running down a path, is setting up a screen where I can type in name, email, and password, and then have that send that information to the API we just debugged in Xano. And then it will return back an auth token that I will put into an app variable that will then be used by the to-do APIs to let me get access to the data in the application. So that's the goal of what we're doing. We have a screen here that we're going to turn into the, we're going to put a couple containers. This is going to be our sign-in. We are going to want 3 input fields. By the way, you can just duplicate the fields using this duplicate icon. We are going to change the labels. Let's say email, name, and password. And actually, what I need to do is delete this last one, because for password, we obviously want to use password field. And that way, when you type in the password on the mobile app, nobody can see it, because it'll put the asterisks in for you. Okay, so for the email, we're not going to mess with the value and such yet. I'm going to create another variable before we do that. But I do want to change the keyboard type to be email address, so that we get a keyboard that's more functional for typing in an email. Name, I'm just going to leave as the default keyboard, and password should have everything set up the way I want it, as is. So then we want a button. Put that in its own container so we can mess with that later. And this will be sign up. So if we wanted to give it a little bit more fun spacing, we could just put an image at the top. That could be a logo or something like that. And if we have enough time later on, we'll add something in. So at this point, I've set up the screen that I'm going to be working with. Now what I want to do is go back in and set up the data resource that will be the sign up resource. So we're going to get the direct integration REST API. We're going to just call this sign up, user sign up. And I need to go get the resource URL from Xano. So we come into the APIs again, and sign up is where we're going. Click on the endpoint URL. It puts it into the clipboard, and there we go. Okay, so at this point, I have sign up as a base URL setting. In this case, we're not going to use any of the gets. We're going to use the create record because a sign up is actually creating a user record. And you'll notice I get a blank screen. You need to look over here to the right, and you'll see that you need to turn this item on. And then what we need to do is create the data that's going to get passed in. So in this case, we need to create the schema, the data elements, the JSON structure as it would be that gets passed in, and it's going to be name, email, and password. So we're going to give it a key of name. The title will be the same. That will be text. And then I shouldn't save it because it keeps moving me to the base. Okay, so go back to schema. This time we're going to put in email. I'm going to leave that as text type, even though we could probably make it an email type. And then password. So these are the three things the API expects from us. Name, email, and password. Okay. So now if I go into test, I should see it in the custom object. And the name is going to be test account 2 ta2 at email.com and test password and 1. We'll save that and run a test. Be there. Okay, so what we've proven is that the functioning API in Xano can now successfully be called from AppGyver. And so now we're going to just work our way back up. Let me go ahead and save, work our way back up to the screen, I should say. So, okay, so I need a variable to hold this information and to also use it to pass these variables into the API. So I'm going to go into the variable section, and I am going to do two things at once because I need that variable, but I also need to remember to create the data variable that is sign up. Okay, and that is a new data record that I'm going to do for that one. Remember, we were doing a post or creating a record because we're creating a user record. And I'm going to get rid of the one. I've been forgetting to get rid of that, but don't really like it. Okay. And now I need a page variable because I need to collect the information that gets typed in. So this will be sign up. And we are going to make this a type of object. And what that allows me to do when I create it as a type of an object is I can create the three necessary properties within sign up. And so I can just pass sign up directly into the API call. So there is sign up. And we get a default property name, but we're going to call that name. It's going to be text. And then we're going to go back up to sign up. And you add the new properties here. So I'm clicked on the sign up. I come over to add new property. And I am going to have email. I'm going to have password. Okay, those are the three elements or the three data elements that will get added in here. Go ahead and save that. Go back to the view. Okay, so now I want to attach the value to be a data, be a page variable. It'll be sign up, and I'm going to pick name. Actually, was that email? See, I've already forgotten. Pretty sure it was email. Yeah. Okay, so email, and then name, and then password. Data, page, sign up, name. And then we will do the value, data, page, and password. Okay, so now I have bound each of these fields to that object variable called signup. Now what I want to do is when I tap on signup, I want to create a record because we're creating the user record for the first time. And it picked sign up. Now we have two of them, but it picked sign up. And we want to pick a, what do we have here? I'm going to go to the data variable, pick sign up there. So in this case, I select the page variable of sign up. Since it's an object, it shows me all of the object. And since I'm associating this variable with three objects or three properties to the sign up data variable, since they match, they both have three text properties, I'm able to just associate the whole object with it instead of one property at a time. And then just for a temporary moment, I am going to create an alert if we successfully create the sign up. And I'm going to call this auth token. And I'm going to go into optional inputs. And I'm going to pick output value of another node, which is going to be the create record. And I'm going to pick the response. So the goal here will be if we sign up correctly, that we'll see that auth token show up in here. And if we don't sign up correctly, if something fails, I'm going to associate toast, which is just a temporary pop-up that shows the error. So let's go ahead and say that if the output value of another node, create record, is the error message. And actually, this is probably worth a second of description. In this case, I have two output ports. The top one is success, and the bottom one is error. And I know that because when I click on create record and come over to the outputs section, it will show me the details and says output at port 1 is the successful response, and output at port 2 is error. So if you noticed, when I drug the line over to here, I had a different set of data that I could pick from the response record. And when I drug it over to the toast, I had an error message. And that was because of where these lines are exiting the create record. So that makes it really handy to handle success and error conditions. Okay. What are the chances that I've done anything right on this one? I do know the one thing I need to do is I created a sign up page, but there's no way to get to it. It's just out there on its own. The login page is the default page at this point. So I am going to very simply create the ability to get to that page. So I'm going to put a container with a row, with a button. I'm going to do a little styling on this button, and as I do that, I'll explain to you what I'm trying to do. The goal here is that we want to create a link. So it's not going to be a button, well, it will be, but it's going to look like a link that takes us to the sign up page. Let's see what color background does. There we go. And then we'll do typography, and we'll pick a text color. Let's say subdued. There we go. That's not bad. And let's make this a little bit smaller of a font. Not 0. That's way too small. Okay. And so what I have now is create new account. There. So if you were to go to any mobile app, you usually show up at the login page, and they give you an option to create a new account. And they also, I probably don't need to create this one yet, but we're going to, just to give you an idea. This one won't be create new account, it'll be forgot password. So these will be all the fun things we do. And those would just be two nice links, which is why I did the row with the two cells. And so now we want to, on this button that is create new account, I am going to open a page. And guess what? That page is not going to be the login page. That is going to be the sign up page. Okay. There we go. Let's call that good enough to give it a try and see where we're at with this. Okay. Looks like I need to, there we go. Let's get the app to start over real quick. So we start on our login. Okay. So now I should be able to click on create new account, which takes me to that screen. And I am going to do a TA3 at email. I'm going to try to keep to my pattern, even though it doesn't matter. This is test account 3, and this is going to be a password. As you can see, I do not have, and then sign up. Well, looky there. Sometimes things go my way. So there we have it. We have now created a sign up that's successful because we have an auth token. But what we have created at this point is the ability to create user accounts, as you can see here. So we now have, from the mobile app and AppGyver, through the APIs, the ability to create a brand new user account, get the auth token. And what I'll do in the next video is show you how to handle the auth token and associate that with the login screen. We might even do the automatic login capabilities most apps have. And I'll show you what's involved with setting local storage with that auth token so that you can actually look for it and log somebody in without asking them to do the login. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm looking forward to getting the whole sign up thing done for you guys.